Take off my headphones as well. I would like to just say hello and welcome to everybody joining us from the internet. This is a Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid, VAWMA. Tonight we're presenting Cooperative Business Structures, a proposal. Before we get too far along though, I'd just like to say hello and welcome to anybody who's tuned in. And I would also like to introduce Kat, who's going to be doing the introduction tonight and just getting everybody on the same page. So it's my friend Kat. And take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, James. So, again, thank you everybody for joining us here and as well as on the interwebs. It means a lot to us for this turnout for our week 2. And again, before we begin, we at VAWMA would, and those gathered here tonight, would like to acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of the Saugeen and the Chippewas of the Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. This event is being live streamed, so if you're watching at home and have any questions, please let our moderator know and we will get those in during the discussion period at the end. There will be a 10 to 15 minute break before we introduce our guest speaker, John McNamara, who will be going into detail about sociocracy in the workplace. We also want this to be an open discussion. If you have any questions, ask. If you need clarification, ask. Again, my name is Catherine, and most of you will know me from the discussions through our Facebook chat as well as online as Catherine. And I am honored to be a part of this project that James has been putting together over the last couple of months. And I want to give him a huge shout out. I have been able to watch this go from an idea in his head to a 4-week event, which is super exciting. Yeah. James has also been kind enough to let me bring awareness to my passion as well as my business as a self-employed trauma-aware coach. So just before we go for break, I will be doing a little bit of an infographic as to what I do specifically. So before we get into any of it, are there any questions? Awesome. All right.
Oh, there, yeah. So yeah, now, yeah.
For those of you that were here last week, for those of you that are joining us for the first time, I'm just going to briefly go over the Coles Notes of what is VAWMA and why are we here today? We're here because the old way does not work for us anymore. The current business model is outdated, top-heavy, and has not changed while the evolving world around it has. The old way is servitude, and the one with the money makes the decisions. Your self-worth is based on the dollar you make. VAWMA is about service, reciprocity, win-win. Equality equals equity. You are valued. So what is VAWMA? The Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid. No one is forcing you to be here. You chose to be here because you want change. You do not like the way current society is running, and you want to make a difference in your life, as well as support the cause to help others. You support the business, and in exchange, you get to share in the surplus. It's a win-win. James is going to cover more of this in detail in a few moments, but I just want to give a brief overview of what the foundation of VAWMA is built on. Most important, we are mutual aid. We help one another. Utilizing meetings, just like this one, we open the floor for those that are in need. We discuss who can help who. If we can't help in the immediate, we look for solutions together, collectively. Last week, we went into depth into this and had an amazing conversation with John Restakis. If you missed the meeting, please make sure to check out the VOD. It was super enlightening and super entertaining. We are a union. We are a collective that agrees on all fronts on how our collective is run. You have a voice. Your opinion matters. If you do not agree with how something is running or being handled, speak up. As a collective, we are here together to cooperate and make a difference. Equality equals equity. We are a co-op incubator. If you have a dream that you want realized, Have you always wanted to have your own business, but never had the capital or the surplus to have it go? This is it. Bring your ideas to the table. Let us help you with the tools and resources to realize your goal. VAWMA is an umbrella corporation. Under the heading of VAWMA, you have the individual businesses. Within that corporation, you are able to celebrate in the wins of the business that you support. You are able to reinvest in those businesses to keep them going or cash out at the end of the year. Our mission statement. What if there was an alternative to being a wage slave? That is what VAWMA is for, to give each member a living wage, control over their schedule, as well as to share in the surplus of the businesses that they help support and run. If you don't agree with the way things are working, change it. If you think you have a set of skills or business that would help others and realize your dream of working for yourself and not the man, VAWMA is the starting spot. People are our bottom line. So what is a corporation? What is the difference between a co-op run business and a cooperative business? In a word, structure. Today's business flow looks a lot like a hierarchy. The owner lives off the profits and benefit from the business. The manager manages the checks and balances of the business and based on the profit, gets a bonus for bringing in more profit. Supervisor is the illusionary position of management where they are paid hourly, sometimes salary, in order to make sure the rest of the workers are doing their job. Workers are scheduled for X number of hours per week in order to fulfill the needed shifts. With the VAWMA business flow, there are noticeable changes to the structure. Every member of VAWMA is an owner of the business. Managers are ultimately responsible for the profit, loss, and cost to sell for each business. These people are also elected by the board of directors as well as the collective VAWMA members. Supervisors, workers. If an assistant is needed, then supervisors support the managers in keeping up with the daily tasks. Workers are able to choose the hours they work, the amount of shifts they work, and are paid a living wage that is agreed upon by the collective. Workers, supervisors, managers are all in the same playing field when it comes to decide the living wage. I understand that was a lot of information that I threw at you, and I want to take the next few minutes to unpack. Anything you might not understand, anything you would like clarification on, anything you would like to review. If you've had questions from last week, let us know. Anything from the internet? Any questions? Any questions from the audience? Awesome. Thank you again for your time this evening. I will now hand things back over to James, and he will continue the discussion about cooperative workplaces.
Yeah, good.
All righty. So once again, I would just like to say hello and welcome to everybody. We're saying hi to you from the snowy location of the budding rural metropolis of Owen Sound, located in the northern half of southwestern Ontario. We're coming live from the eastern half of Owen Sound, from the Owen Sound hub. We'd like to say thank you to the people who are enabling this today. Thank you everybody for coming out. Thank you for the people on the couch. Glad to have you guys. So tonight we're going to be going into a little bit of details about what it is that the Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid is on about and what it is that we do. So we are on about creating cooperative workspaces. Yep, bring her up. So my question to you is, what is VAWMA? VAWMA, aside from the acronym of the Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid, we are at our base a mutual aid network. We basically a community of people that have agreed that instead of me looking out for myself and I, we're going to look out for each other. You know, we're going to make sure that no one is left behind. And as we do that, we're going to recognize as well that we are basically workers. We are going to pool together our labor and recognize that we are collectively, we have the power to bargain with ourselves what it is that we are going to do, what it is that we are going to make, how it is that we're going to make it, what it is that we're going to pay ourselves as we make it, and what it is that we're going to sell it for. And so we recognize that we are operating like a union. We're also a cooperative business incubator. So as we come together and pool our labor and our resources, we're also going to create businesses that will hire us at a living wage, give us control over our things like our schedule, things like our work environment. And when we make a surplus, we share that surplus between those who helped contribute to creating that surplus in the first place. So as we get a couple of businesses under our belt, as we get one or two up and off the ground, we're going to become a cooperative umbrella corporation, a democratic umbrella corporation that shares across the membership the surplus of what it is that our businesses make. So tonight, we're going to be talking specifically about the aspects of what it is that makes us a union and what it is that makes us a cooperative business incubator. Okay? And to start there, everything has a beginning. Everything starts in someplace. And so the first step is to have an idea, something that we can do to make money, basically. And once you come up with your idea, you basically then write it down and share it with a couple of different members of VAWMA. So we want to get at least 10 member signatures. So you get your business idea, and then you then take it around to different people and you share it with them. Is the slides coming in?
Keep going.
So the basic idea is you want to get people to sign off on, like, yes, that's the kind of idea that I would love to see set before the General Assembly to see if we can ratify that and adopt that as a business. So you get 10 member signatures, and what that does is that allows you to then approach our Cooperative Development Committee. These are the members of VAWMA who who know the law, basically know what we can legally do, know what we can't do under the law in Canada, what it is that they'll basically help you figure out what your target demographic is, figure out if that target demographic actually exists within our area. They'll have access to that kind of information. And they will work with you to help you craft and create a business model that will fit within our VAWMA structure. Once you have something that works, that you can present, we then bring it to the General Assembly. Now, our General Assembly meets 4 times a year, once a quarter, at the very least. And at that meeting, you will have a chance to present your idea to the General Assembly. We'll give you 2 to 5 minutes to present your idea, depending on how much time you need. And at that point, the General Assembly will vote. And they will vote either to adopt your idea outright or to say, we're not convinced that this is the right fit for us at this time. It needs to be developed a little bit more. Okay. So in the event that the vote doesn't go your way, that your business idea is not adopted by VAWMA, by the general membership, and just a bit of a word on that, because we are a democratically run corporation, because we are every member has a vote on what it is that we do. What it is that we're looking for is group consensus on what it is that we want to do in terms of business. So with regards to that, it's not just 1 or 2 investors that you have to convince this is a business idea. It's everybody who's going to be a part of the enterprise that we're looking to get a plurality of people on board with. So we're democratic. If we all like your idea, then we're going to adopt it. And at that point, your idea becomes ratified. You will have a budget as part of your business plan. We're going to be like, yes, that's a good business plan. Yes, we think that's something we can afford to invest in. And we're going to go for it. So when that happens, we then move to step 2, which is the implementation of the business plan. So As the person who came up with the business idea, we're going to recognize that you are the founding member. And we distinguish between our members in a couple of different ways. First off, everybody who is a member of VAWMA pays a small monthly due. Works out to be, I'm proposing, $25 a month, $300 a year. You can pay the $300 in one lump sum, or you can pay it monthly. It's up to you. But by paying in that small monthly fee, you become part owner of VAWMA. You become a member of what it is that we're doing. So everybody who is a member of VAWMA is that base level. There's nobody who's not a general member of VAWMA. We then have dedicated members. These are the people that are chipping in a little bit more for the right and for the to be able to own and run the business within VAWMA. These dedicated members are the backbone of what it is that we do. And for their chipping in a little bit more, we also make sure that we give back to them a little bit more. We treat their buy-in as like an investment. So as a dedicated member, you'll be dedicating yourself to a cooperative business for a certain amount of time, a couple of years. And over that period of time, you will be investing your buy-in into that business, which we will then put towards starting that business, for lack of a better term. The founding member is like a dedicated member who found the business. You're the one who came up with the business plan. And to recognize that you are the person that came up with the business plan, we give you a couple of different things that are in addition to what most members will experience. So the first thing we do is we give you a 1 pip per week for the duration of the business's existence within VAWMA. What's a pip, I hear you asking? Glad you asked. A PIP is an acronym for what we call the Partners in Surplus. And we call it the Partners in Surplus. And we call it PIP because pronouncing it with the S was a little vulgar. Yeah, thank you. So a PIP is the way how we distribute the surplus within the members of VAWMA. It's our way of being democratic and controlling things democratically. Basically, there's a number of different ways that a member of VAWMA can generate a PIP. You can work full-time hours. You can work your first shift a week. So the first shift you week work at one of our VAWMA businesses, you generate a PIP. If you work full-time hours at a VAWMA business or across multiple VAWMA cooperatives, you get another PIP. If you're performing an administrative task or administrative role, you get a PIP. If you are paying your monthly a membership due or your buy-in, you get a PIP. And we cap the amount of pips that you can make within the quarter at 65 pips. That's about 5 pips a week. The amount of pips that you generate when the businesses that we work create a profit or make a surplus, we then split that surplus up by the amount of pips that we've generated. And then we say to you and your pips, where do you want to put those pips within our business? And you can reinvest those pips within the cooperative businesses. You can invest them in projects. You can invest them in benefits, or you can just cut yourself a check and cash out, create a dividend share. And that's actually the default. So as a founding member, we recognize that because you started the business with us, we're going to give you, let you generate a PIP for every week that business is in existence. So from the day we open up the doors and we have customers, you're getting a PIP until the day that business closes and we're no longer taking customers. It's just a way of, you can think of it as sharing in the profits or the surplus of what that business makes. We also allow you to be a permanent member of the Workers' Council. So normally, a Workers' Council is comprised of dedicated members. These are the people who are buying into the business. They're putting a little bit of skin into the game, and for their skin, they get a say in the process of what we do, when we do it, how we do it, that sort of thing. As the founding member, you will always have a spot on that council. And because we intend to practice sociocracy, you will always have the option to be able to voice your opinion and to object. So you have continue to have a say and of how your business that you've dreamed of, that you've birthed with VAWMA, will be conducted. You'll always have a say. And in addition, as the founding member, once your business plan that you've come up with has been ratified by the General Assembly, you will be the person that basically interviews the members of VAWMA to determine who will become the dedicated members of the business that we've adopted. So, dedicated members. Again, these are the people that form the Workers' Council. These are the people that will determine and work the business. These are the people who will operate on the business on the day-to-day basis. They'll be the people doing the purchasing. They'll be the people staffing. They'll be the people being the customer service, doing whatever it takes in order to make that business operate. These are the dedicated members. And the Workers' Council comes up with the business plan and implements the business plan. And we also, as the dedicated members, when they get together for the very first time, they will decide their organizational structure. Now, if you're used to working at a job in anywhere in Canada or North America, you're typically used to having a boss who hires you and agrees to pay you a wage so long as you show up when they tell you to, wear the clothes that they tell you to, say what they tell you to, do what they tell you to do. And if you don't, they have the right to fire you. Okay. In our cooperative structure, every dedicated member is a part owner, and there's no manager that can come along and fire you. There's no manager that can come along and kick you out. So to that end, we allow our members to decide how it is that they want to organize themselves in order to make sure that what needs to be done on a day-to-day basis happens. Now, if you're used to having a manager, if you're used to having one person be the key person that looks after everything, you can still do that within our setup. You can hire a manager. The main difference being that the manager that you hire can't fire any of you. And in fact, they are responsible to you, the workers, for making sure that they are managing the business in a safe and effective manner. And if you don't like how they are managing the business, you get to fire the manager. It's a little bit of a different way of doing things, but I'm intrigued, having grown up in North America at this particular style here. And we're not the only ones to do this as well. This is a style of that is practiced in places like Mondragon, which is the 7th largest corporation in Spain, and it has over 100,000 members in it, and it is also a cooperative. So one of my inspirations for this particular what it is that we're doing. So once we've decided what the organizational structure is going to look like and what it is that we're going to do, we then have to figure out what our startup cost is. Okay, so we got some math here up on the screen. I know, it's pretty horrible. We're going to use a hypothetical business in this particular scenario. So first off, let me break down the equation. Our total startup cost is going to be our embodied labor cost, our startup embodied labor cost, plus 3 months of living labor wages. So living labor are the people that are doing the work, people that you have to pay, human beings. When we get started, we're going to make sure that we have 3 months of wages sitting in the bank, ready to go, so that we can be in business for 3 months. And during those 3 months, everybody will get paid no matter what. So we can be in business for 3 months, not sell a single thing, and everybody still gets paid at the end of the 3 months. That's the plan behind this. Now, we're going to plan to make money during those 3 months. And we got plans on how to do that. But suffice to say, in case we don't, we have that set aside for the rainy day. We also have embodied labor, And embodied labor is basically what people who have come before us have created and turned into stuff, be it a building, be it tools, be it other things like electricity, our utility bills. So our embodied labor are things like that, our lease on our building, our utility bills, our insurance costs, the product that it is that we're going to be selling, the tools that we need in order to create what it is that we're doing. So we add those two things together, the tools and the building and all those things, we add those all up, and that becomes our embodied labor cost, and we add that to our 3 months of wages. We add that together, and that becomes our total startup cost. And then we then divide the total startup cost between the number of dedicated members that are part of that cooperative. Okay, so that's some concepts. Let's add some numbers into that. So let's say in a hypothetical cooperative business, we're going to make doohickeys. And we're going to have 10 of us that makes doohickeys. And doohickeys are a lucrative business. We can make lots of money making doohickeys. So we're going to pay ourselves, we all agree that we're going to pay ourselves a base living wage of about $20 an hour. Okay? So there's 10 of us making $20 an hour, and we're all going to be working full time, working 40 hours a week. That's the goal. So now we know what our 3 months worth of living labor is. Now I've already done the math, and it works out to be $104,000 Canadian in order to save up for the living labor that we'll need for 3 months. All right. Next, we add in the embodied labor. And just for simplicity of math, we're going to say that our embodied labor, our lease, our insurance, our cost of our supplies, the cost of our tools, all of that, everything that we need to make all the doohickeys that we need for the first 3 months is going to be $104,000 even, just to make the math about as easy as we can. So together, we now have a total startup cost of $208,000 Canadian. Okay, we're now going to divide that between the 10 different members. So the math whizzes amongst you, that's going to be just over 20 grand that our dedicated members are on the hook for putting in. Now we're going to spread this out over, you don't have to put in 20 grand just like that, because I don't have 20 grand. I'm sure you don't have 20 grand. None of us have 20 to invest. Maybe Rich Uncle does. We're going to talk about Uncle Rich though next week, and what Uncle Rich can do to help invest and help us get moving along. But we're going to spread that payment out over 10 years. And we're going to pay it monthly for a monthly buy-in of $173.33. So when you take that $20,000 that I'm on the hook for giving in now, or putting in, I'm going to spread that out over 10 years, pay it monthly. It's $173.33 a month. Okay. So with my dedicated members fee, it's just under $200 a month in order to get this business started and off the ground. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take the buy-in and we're going to put it into a pot, and that pot is going to accumulate. We're going to have, because we've got 10 other members putting in their $173 a month. It ends up being a couple of thousand a month. I had the numbers, but I didn't put them down in my notes. I should have done that. Sorry for that. A good point to remember as well is that if you do have 20 grand to put in, we will count the 20 grand that you're putting in like you were putting it in monthly. You'll still get PIPs every single month as though you were paying it monthly. We just distribute them out over 10 years, once a month sort of thing. Anyway, so we take the buy-in and it accumulates. We then use the amount that we accumulate as leverage for borrowing. So then we can start going to credit unions, actual unions. We go to other lenders, banks, anybody who will listen to us, and we say, look, we've got X amount of money in the bank already. We have people contributing X amount of money every single month. We have 10 people contributing $173.33 every single month. What will you give us? You know, how much money can we borrow? What can we get away? What terms? And we work until we get favorable terms. We also, once we're mature, we have a couple of businesses operating within VAWMA, and we are using PIPs. You can also put PIPs that you generate within VAWMA towards a new business that we're in the process of starting. So that's one of the things that you can do with your PIPs, which we're going to go into a lot more detail on next week. There are also bursaries and grant programs out there in the world for starting new businesses for the first time. We'll try and get as many of those as we can. Any grants or any bursaries to get us off the ground, anything from the government, we will definitely try and do it. Local fundraising, crowdfunding. This is one of the things that I thought would be really neat as we form groups of people together that are committed to starting these businesses. Like I can't imagine in a place like Owen Sound, which is full of so many talented people, that we couldn't pull together like a few acts of people doing music that we could sell $10 a ticket for, with the proceeds going towards starting our business. And we can then start bringing in people from outside of VAWMA into VAWMA and share in with them what it is that we're planning on doing, and hopefully we'll get more people to sign up and join in with VAWMA. So I hope you're getting an idea for what it is that we're trying to do in order to create the funding that we need to get going. But at the end of the day, even if it takes us 10 years to save up the money that we need to get this business off the ground, that's what we're committed to. It won't take us that long, because again, we're pooling our money in order to get to the point where we can borrow the full amount that we need in order to get started. And once we get that money that we need to get started, we start the next day or the nearest available date. Let me just take a moment to talk about the Workers' Council that the dedicated members form, because these are the people that are going to be making sure that the business functions on a day-to-day basis. And it's created by the dedicated members. And remember, these are people who are giving the $173 a month. So they get to decide who's going to be the chair. And the chair is not your hierarchical person. They are not the person that can fire anybody. They are the person that is the go-to person. They're the name that's on the lease. They're the name that makes sure make sure that you get your paycheck, that sort of thing. If you have a question about what's going on in the business, you go to the chair. And the chair gets a PIP for their troubles, maybe a little bit more money. It depends. It's negotiated on a case-by-case basis, on a co-op-by-co-op basis. But we'll have a couple of standards sort of in place. Next person that is named is a treasurer. And this is the person that basically has the power of the purse. They have access to the account. And they have access to they're your go-to person for the financial details. So if you ever want to know how the business is doing, you just find the treasurer and say, "Hey, treasurer, my person, can you show me how we're doing? What did we do last month? Where can I improve?" That sort of thing. The treasurer opens up the books and shows you, how we did. And then there's a third person, the secretary. And the secretary represents the co-op that you're a part of on the board of directors. So we do have a board of directors. We do have a CEO. We do have all the fun stuff. And they are responsible for making sure that all of our businesses are actually, running and making money, that sort of thing. And to help determine the running of the entire company, every cooperative business will have a representative that sits on that business. It sits on the board of directors, I should say, that helps that chair and that treasurer and the people that are responsible for running the entire corporation, make sure that they get there with the input from the workers. There's also, for every spot on the board of directors that is created by a secretary from a cooperative, there's a mirrored seat that is filled by a member of the General Assembly. They can be dedicated members of other businesses, but they aren't representing those businesses on the board of directors. They are representing the interests of the general members. of whom we will have not just dedicated members who are working at cooperatives, but also hopefully our customers who we will encourage to become members of VAWMA, so that when they come and purchase and buy something at one of our VAWMA stores, not only will they get a discount for what it is that they're for bringing business to us, we'll give them a PIP. And that's one of the ways that we want to help use to generate business within VAWMA, is by incentivizing people to use us, by giving PIPs for spending money at us. So anyway, that's completely aside. We're going to go more on that probably in the last week, if not next week as well. So we've got our treasurer, our secretary, and our chair. These are the three people that are basically responsible for creating the dedicated members meeting. So as dedicated members, once a month, you will all get together, part of that business. You will open up the hood of the business and you will look under the hood and you will see what is working, what isn't working, what can we do better, what can we do, what are we doing currently that is working, what's the feedback that we're getting from our customers, what are people's experience on the floor, what are people's experience with our suppliers, do we need to look at different suppliers, do we need to look at, that sort of thing. This is the point in time when that happens. So that we don't have a scenario or situation on a Tuesday morning where two workers show up and they decide that they're going to change their entire business model. That's not going to happen. The time and place when we change our business model happens once a month at the monthly meeting. And it's those three, the chair, the treasurer, and the secretary, it's their basically job, in addition to making sure that the plan that everybody comes up with during this monthly meeting is implemented on a day-to-day basis. They also are the ones responsible for compiling the information that is then given to the dedicated members, so that the dedicated members are in a position to make informed decisions about what it is that we're doing with our business. So, yeah. So that brings us to step 3, doing it. There's a lot of fun. So monthly budget goals, how we make our money. And this is kind of key because we want to get into business, not just so that we can get paid for standing around and doing nothing. We want to get into business so that we can make money. It's what makes the world go around, I'm afraid. So this is a picture of what it is that it looks like. So this month here, we've got, you can think of this as, when we first get started, this will be the startup budget. The what do you call? Month 1 will be taken care of, sort of thing. With the startup budget, we've already got 3 months worth of wages ready to go, and we've got the embodied labor costs, all the supplies and things that we need. So we open the business, and week 1 we're working, week 2 we're working, week 3 we're working to save up money for month number 2. And week 4, week 5, and week 6, we're working for month number 3. Week 7, week 8, and week 9, we're working for month number 1 of the next quarter. Okay. Now, just for those who are uninitiated, a quarter refers to a quarter of the year, which is about 13 weeks, or 52 weeks in a year. Divide that by half. Divide that by half again, you end up with 13 weeks. So once every 13 weeks, we get together as a general assembly. We have a meeting, find out how we did over the past quarter, find out if we made any profit, if we made any surplus, I should say. And then we find out how much our PIPs are worth, spread out between the different PIPs that we were made. So if this is a little confusing, I apologize. It's the way my brain works. So let's put some numbers in here. We had an example that we had set up of a business that made doohickeys with 10 dedicated members, working 40 hours a week, getting paid $20 an hour. So we know what the wages we need to make up for a quarter, for 3 months, or a quarter's worth of wages is about $104,000. We need to make that in 9 weeks. So we divide that up between 9 weeks, and it's about $11,555.56 a week. Okay, that's our goal. In order to cover our wages, that's how much money we need to make. Cool. Let's say for our doohickeys, once we bought our tools, we don't need to buy any more tools because they're going to last us the year. So we don't have to repay. Like we've got our lease, we paid it for the year, or we're paying it monthly, whatever it is. We're gonna be taking our supplies and our body labor costs. We're gonna be spreading that out as well. And just for our purposes, we're gonna say that it's 52,000, which is half of 104,000. And we need to make that in 9 weeks. So again, spread that out. It's $5,777.78 a week. Put it together, our weekly budget goals is $17,333.34 cents a week. Or over the total quarter, it's going to be $225,333. Okay. We are going to put some numbers in there. So I did some fancy fun with some dice and randomly generated some revenue for us. We should. So these are the numbers. The first month in this hypothetical situation, making doohickeys, we made $11,797. Not enough to cover our weekly budget goal of 17,000. Okay, so the first week of business, a little slow. It happens. We're then second week of business. We pulled ourselves together. We rallied, and we made $21,032. Which is more than our budget goal, but not more than the shortfall that we made in there. So we're still a little behind as we get going in. Third week, it was again pretty low. We did not make enough money to cover the entire second month of wages or supplies by the third week of the first month. That's okay. By the time we got to the fourth week, we did make it up. We made $19,783. So we made enough money to stay in business for the second month, which is great. And we continued to do good for the next 2 weeks. As you can see, 25,841 and 21,249 respectively. Our third week of the second month, not so great. But you know what? You win some, you lose some. We almost made our weekly budget goal, but not quite. As you can see, though, the week after, we made 25,000, 23,000, and then by the time we got over here, we're getting into our territory where we're going to start hopefully making money. I believe if I did the math correctly, it was somewhere around here that we broke even. Over the total of the quarter, over the total of 13 weeks, in this projected simulation, we managed to make $257,000, got it there in the end, $675, which was more than our budget goal of $225,333, for a total surplus of $32,341.58 Canadian.
Before taxes.
That's before taxes.
Yay.
So so what happens with that? Now this is just one quarter. What happens is at the end of the quarter, we then have a general meeting where we find out not only how this particular doohickey business did, but also how the other businesses that are members of VAWMA did as well. And at that point, we then find out what the whole surplus that we generated together is, divide that by the total amount of pips, and then we get to put our pips into different areas. Again, you can reinvest it in your business. You can invest it in a business that is in the process of getting started. You can invest it in benefit programs. You can invest it in projects, all of which we're going to go into more details in the next couple of weeks as we talk a little bit more about this idea. So we won't go into details now, but one of the things that you can do, and this is actually the default position, is that your pips will, if you don't decide to put your pips anywhere, they will automatically become dividend shares, and the pips, the money that pip represents, will be put into an account which we basically get taxed on, because that becomes the profit that we've made as a business. We haven't reinvested it. We haven't put it anywhere else in the business. We haven't paid it out, or we haven't invested in charity or anything like that. So it goes to we're paying ourselves out. This money is now profit into that pile. We then pay taxes, income tax on that for the business. Whatever's left over then gets split between everybody who put in pips to the dividend shares. And then we cut you a check. You are responsible for paying capital gains tax on that. That's between you and CRA. But I will say that you end up paying less tax on capital gains for dividend shares than you pay when you get it taken out in the terms of wages. So consider that. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we've discussed so far?
So the buy-in is separate from the monthly pay-in for a membership fee, right?
Correct. So we do have, at this stage of the game, we have two distinct fees that you would pay. You have the general membership fee, $25 a month, and that's universal for everybody. And then you have the buy-in, and the buy-in is treated like an investment. So for the 20,000 and change that the 10 members of the Doohickey factory put in, at the end of that 10 years, they can then retire. They can say, hey, it was a great run. I loved my time here, but you know what? I'm 65 now and I want to retire. I don't want to make doohickeys anymore. Cool. We will buy you out. We will take the money that you've invested over that 10 period of years, that 20,800, and we will give it back with interest because you invested that in us when we needed it. Yeah, so that's what we do with the buy-in. You give it to us, we turn it into a business over the course of 10 years, we give it back. But yeah, there are two separate fees that we pay. That's the current plan. It might change as we get more members and as we codify our bylaws, but that's currently the idea. Yeah. So speaking of current proposals, current ideas, that brings us to what it is that we want to do for VAWMA. And this is the proposal. We start doing a 4-week rotation. On weeks 1 and weeks 3, we do mutual aid meetings where we gather together to eat together. We have potlucks, entertain each other, bring our guitars, bring a deck of cards, bring a board game or two, and we build community. And in the process of doing that as well, we make sure that we set aside time in order to address people's needs. And in the event that a need is identified, we as a community come around and try to address those needs. In the event that there is something catastrophic that happens in our community, we want to be a network of people that are ready to be able to be there and to volunteer if we can, as we can, when we can. Yeah, and we do those weeks on weeks 1 and weeks 3. On weeks 2 and weeks 4, we get together and we educate ourselves as to how to run a business, what our businesses can look like, come up with business ideas, encourage people to come up with business ideas, and dream. So that is weeks 2 and weeks 4. And then in addition, on week 4, we have a general meeting. Kind of like every cooperative business has a meeting once a month. We would have a meeting once a month where we open up the hood of our of VAWMA, take a look underneath and say, hey, what bylaws do we want to add? What bylaws do we want to change? What bylaws do we need or don't need? That sort of thing. What's working, what isn't? We do that on an ongoing basis. So year 1, year 2, year 3, as long as we're existing, we're doing this 4-week rotation. When we have a business idea that comes out of weeks 2 and weeks 4, and we all adopt it, and we'd say, yes, that's a business we're going to start. We then we then incorporate. We start putting in our $25 a month each at that point, and then we start doing what we can to raise money to get our first business off the ground. That's year 2. Year 3, we continue to meet on that 4-week basis. We continue to support the very first business that we got started, and we continue to find out if our pips are worth anything, if we've made any money yet. If we haven't, we do what we can to try and drum up as much business for our business as possible. And in the process, we also try to start our second business, because the more businesses we have up and running, the more we can help each other out and keep each other afloat. When one business is doing well, we all do well. We also could co-develop benefits programs. So this is things like group benefits, dental, medical, optical, that sort of thing. Things that aren't covered by our healthcare system, which is quite a lot, I'm afraid. Year 4, we start a third cooperative business, and we also centralize things like bookkeeping and administration. So rather than having a bookkeeper for each individual business, we'll have 1 or 2 bookkeepers that look after the books of all the businesses that we run, and they operate in a central location. Everybody just sends them their timesheet, they compile everything, make sense of it, operation. Year 5, start businesses 4, 5, 6, 7, we just win. And that's the plan. So that's a lot of information. I just want to ask, does anybody have any questions about anything that we presented so far? Are there any questions? Oh, what's that?
How do you do how does this whole TV thing work on there?
I'll go into a little bit more details about that maybe at the break. Yeah, sounds good. Just a question about how we have our setup here, correct? Yeah. And to be honest, I'm not entirely too sure. It's a bit of a jury rig thing here, so it's a lot of fun. So we're just going to take, in the absence of any questions, do we have any questions on the chat?
The chat has been relatively quiet, and I checked it, but.
All is quiet on the chat front. So in that case, I think
Yeah, we're good.
we don't have any questions. Yes. Yes. We're going to go into a little bit of a break, but before I do that, we're going to give Kat a moment to say a few words. I just want to say, with regards to what Kat is doing, that part of what we're doing here today is in part because we've been sponsored by a local business, Live with Advantage, which has been instrumental in helping me organize my brain, my thoughts, and getting to a place where the idea for VAWMA has gone from an intangible construct up here into something that is we're now presenting to the world in the form of a website, www.vawma.com. That's VAWMA.com. And I'm just going to turn it over to our sponsor tonight, Kat.
Awesome. Do you have my promo slide by chance?
Yeah.
In my speaker note? Boom. There you go.
Yeah, big screen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool. And it's S for my speaker note, right?
Yes.
And I just need to drag it.
Yep. And
Oh gosh.
What?
it's like,
What have I done? I broke it again.
fine.
There we go.
Yeah, let me just big screen that. Oops. Sorry.
That's okay.
Boom. All you.
You're the best. Awesome. Again, so yes, my name is Catherine, and while I am an executive coach, I have been helping James with this amazing plan over the last 4 weeks, and I want to say thank you for bringing me on this journey. Watching this go from just a rambling one day to how is that a problem to this has been amazing. So shout out to you and thank you. And I also want to give thanks for letting me talk about my passion. While I am an executive coach, most recently I have got my certification in transformational coaching, to which it asks and answers the top 3 questions: why me, why this, and why now? Several years ago, I almost lost my husband, my guiding light, to a mishandled medical emergency. I sucked up my pride and I reached out for help. I was told I had to wait. I was left feeling lost. I was heartbroken and abandoned. I vowed after that day, no one ever will be needing mental health support and be left feeling like that. The way we see, hear, feel, think, and interact with mental health has changed. Yet diagnose, prescribe, and fix is still the standard treatment. I have done years of traditional talk therapy only to be left with more questions or more problems than when I started. I found more productivity and results in 6 hours of transformational life coaching than I did with talk therapy. I was able to discover the root cause of my anxiety. I was able to bust out the limiting beliefs of I'm not good enough. I was able to find my authentic self and become better for it. 6 months ago, I couldn't leave my house due to agoraphobia and crippling anxiety. 6 weeks ago, I found transformational coaching. 6 hours ago, I was getting ready to come here to speak in front of this audience and stream this online, thanks to transformational coaching. When it comes to helping others, we are there in an instant. But when it comes to helping ourselves, we will find every excuse not to. Deciding to take the step to make meaningful change in your life needs to be followed through before you say, oh yeah, I forgot, I'll do it tomorrow. So what I want to do and what I want to bring to the world is the enlightenment that I have found in myself. Investing in yourself is the hardest thing you can do, but it is also the most rewarding. Transformational coaching can be intensive for that reason. You're having panic attacks every time you leave the house. Okay, let's find out why and get to the root cause. Sessions are 2 hours so you can make positive change and walk away with rapid results, meaningful results. In Dungeons and Dragons, when a player uses the help action, the other player gets to roll with advantage. So let me use the help action to allow you to live with advantage. James?
Thank you very much.
We're just going to take a 5-minute break. So the washrooms are to my left, to over your right. If you're joining us online, feel free to enjoy. We're going to put up a little slideshow, and we are going to be back in 5 minutes with our special guest tonight, John McNamara, who's joining us with the Northwest Co-operative Development Center, as well as Sociocracy for All. He's going to be speaking about sociocracy in the workplace and how it's used, and I'm really looking forward to this. So have questions, be paying attention in the, we'll be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions for our guest speaker, please ask them, and we'll see you in 5. Okay. So we're gonna come back now and come back. I would like to welcome in our special guest speaker tonight, John McNamara. Hello, John. So John is he works with the Northwest Cooperative Development Center, I believe, as well as work with Sociocracy for All. And I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to share with us this evening. Hi, John.
Oh, hello. Yes. Should I go ahead and share my screen?
Take it away.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. So yeah, tonight talking about sociocracy, which in our little sociocracy's kind of slogan is good enough for now, safe enough to try, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And first, who am I? So yeah, I do co-op development work in Olympia, Washington, with the Northwest Cooperative Development Center. Prior to that, I worked with Union Cab of Madison in Madison, Wisconsin for about 26 years. And I have a master's in management from St. Mary's and cooperatives and credit unions. And I also continued on to do my PhD there as well. And I'll talk a little bit about my dissertation because it included looking at sociocracy and how it compares to other forms of governance and management. I'm also a founding member of the Co-op Circle for Sociocracy for All. For those of you who have looked at the website, tomorrow we're launching our community of practice. So people who are in sociocratic co-ops can have a regular meeting place to learn and talk through issues with other folks that are also practicing sociocracy in co-ops. And then finally, one of my other hats is I teach cooperative strategy for the International Center of Cooperative Management at St. Mary's. And so I'll be touching a little bit on that and certainly encourage people to get into the program. It's a great program. And okay, so what is sociocracy? It's basically a means of organizing work by engaging people through the entire process, as opposed to, and then we use the term consent, although there's considerable debate about whether consent and consensus are fundamentally different things, but I'll talk a little bit about that. It also kind of blends governance and operations into one model. So, often you might hear in co-ops people talk about the governance part and the operations or management part, but this blends it a little bit more and makes that line a little bit fuzzier between the two. In the U.S., sometimes it's referred to as dynamic governance because people in the U.S. freak out when they see the word socio. It almost sounds too much like socialism, so sometimes it's also called dynamic governance. And there are essentially 4 principles that I'll go through. So autonomous circles, double linking, rounds, and consent. But first, just talk a little bit about some of the principles underlying sociocracy. First, really is, of course, Eleanor Ostrom put out 8 principles for proper management of the commons, a strong group identity. So, and we'll see this as in the sociocracy world, this is where we talk about aims and domains, fair distribution of costs and benefits, fair and inclusive decision-making, monitoring agreed upon behaviors. That's also, we'll definitely be seeing that in how sociocracy works. And I hit some of the other ones: authority to self-govern and fast and fair conflict resolution. But these tie in also then to the co-op principles. And what I think this really means for me is that very often co-ops tend to model or tend to use similar decision and governance practices that corporations use. And I think that very process of using a type of governance management that is aimed at investor-owned and benefiting investors kind of pulls co-ops away from their co-op identity. And sometimes in the management world, we kind of talk about it as isomorphism, this control that or this force that works against cooperatives and helps kind of make them seem more and more like their not capitalist competitors. And in fact, now there's and this is one of the things we teach at St. Mary's. We talk about the cooperative enterprise model, that cooperatives are more than just simply transactional organizations, that they are in fact very focused on their environment, society. I think we heard that in the little bit of the movie that was just playing. Definitely a fair place in the economy. And then of course the key is purpose-driven, democratically controlled, and jointly owned and operated. So these kind of principles and theories really tie into wanting to create a different, more viable model for managing our co-ops than traditional hierarchy, and to some extent, I think something that's actually also scalable. The collectivist model works mainly for small organizations, but as you get bigger, you need to have something that's a little bit more structured. So let's see. So first, foremost, the basic unit in sociocracy is called a circle. And I always say, don't get hung up on the vocabulary. You can definitely have whatever name you want. I work with a bookstore that here in Olympia called Work of Books. When they decided to use sociocracy, they decided instead of calling it circles, they were going to call their unit pods, right? So like orcapods. So pick whatever word works for you. So the hierarchy, though, is based on these circles, and in sociocracy, the hierarchy is about job function, not power. So again, the domain of each circle is that area that it has control over, And each circle then has an aim of how they're going to engage their domain, but that aim is based on the overall mission of the organization. Each circle has these 4 key positions: a leader, delegate, facilitator, note taker. And if you don't like the term leader, you can have it be something else. Usually the leaders are chosen from the higher up circle, and delegates are then elected to that higher circle. So you have a double linkage, right? One chosen from below up and the other from top down. And then what the circles do is they meet to basically either create policy for how they're going to do their work, or to assign tasks, and otherwise, they don't really meet, and you don't need to meet just to meet. And also, of course, your reports, and we'll talk a little bit more about the role of reporting sociocracy in a few minutes. So, vision and mission is kind of pretty much what you would expect it to be, right? The vision sets out the world the way you want to see it. It's that really big, maybe unattainable vision that you're striving for. The mission is how your organization actually engages to work towards that vision. And I think without reading all the slides here, but that kind of gives a good description. The aim then of each circle is the specifics of how the mission will be achieved. And the domain, as I mentioned, is what is the circle responsible for. So you might have, for instance, a marketing circle, and anything that has to do with marketing the organization's products or services that's where those decisions get made. So the maintenance circle doesn't really have anything to say about marketing, right? It's so not everybody's in at every meeting. It's kind of that spaces. If something goes beyond the domain of the circle, or maybe there's something that there are legitimate reasons why multiple circles might be have an opinion on it or want to have input on it, then you would go to that higher circle. And usually the main circle is called the general circle. The general circle consists of leaders and delegates from each of the subordinate circles. And then sometimes in co-ops, they'll even kind of refer to the board of directors more as a mission circle as opposed to the board of directors. And then the mission circle would elect the overall leader for the general circle. So the decision-making process, I think, this is kind of the basic thing. Is the idea is it's about steering. It's not about perfection. You're not trying to make everything perfect. It involves really working with everybody to ideate and do the brainstorm, and then really try to expose blind spots. And that's one of the reasons why everyone is participating, not just in the decision, but also in the picture forming and thinking through the issue that's being presented. And then the actual decision, you're looking for a range of tolerance. So whereas consensus might be, everybody agreeing, what you're looking for in sociocracy and consent is nobody objects, right? That it's, as they say, good enough for now, safe enough to try. That's kind of the guideline. It doesn't have to be this absolute perfect done. Almost every decision is going to have a review date, so you're kind of setting up a true experiment, if you will. So if you think of the policy as a hypothesis, and then you test the hypothesis and you look at the end of that time period and say, did it work or not? And or does it need to be refined, and then do it again? And so this, I think, is good even if you aren't using sociocracy. At Union Cab, where I worked, we had pretty much a 2-year review for every policy. Divide certain policies on odd-numbered years and then even-numbered years for others. And that way, every 2 years, every single policy was up for consideration, whether it needed to be amended or maybe it wasn't meaningful anymore for the organization. I think sociocracy builds this in as a standard part of it. And I think it also allows people then to come to that consent role easier because they know it's not going to be this this permanent sort of thing that you have to change it. You're going to have to, get people to agree to change it, right? It's going to naturally come up for review. Okay. So yeah, and then this is how it works, right? You start by doing picture forming. The issue gets presented. You explore the depth of the issue until people feel exhausted and the picture is complete. And then at that point, the facilitator's role is either to synthesize a proposal, or maybe you might create people to go wordsmith and come back with the proposal at a time. But it's about organizing the ideas and trying to make sure that it, as well as it can, addresses the whole picture. Or if it doesn't, acknowledging that what things are being left out and why. So it's a very transparent process. It's not like you often see, say, in Robert's Rules, where maybe somebody comes with a fully drafted proposal and gets motioned and then amended and seconded and all that stuff. This is involving everybody from the beginning as it done. And then finally, there's a consent round. If there are objections, you try to explore those objections. You can't just object for the sake of objecting. Talk a little bit about this in a minute, but usually it's called a paramount objection. It has to mean that either the proposal is fundamentally against the aim of the circle or the mission of the organization, or something like that. It can't just and people have to be able to explain why they are objecting, so that there is an opportunity to address them. So the rounds, sometimes you might hear the phrase round robin. I think that's kind of how I've always heard round it discussed in more traditional parliamentary decision making, but Sociocracy always uses rounds. So there's no stack or speaker list. Specifically, each person in turn is allowed the opportunity to add their input, and they can pass if they want, but essentially you just keep going around until everybody says they're complete or they have nothing new to add. And so that's part of how you do the picture forming. So the idea is that people who tend to speak a lot are kind of reined in a little bit, and people who tend to be quiet, not speak up, are kind of at least given the opportunity to participate and make their voice heard. And then, of course, you go through that the other process of making the decision, and but this is specifically how it's done. I'm not sure if I do. Okay. So consent, to get back to that, I think it's kind of a form of consensus. That's how I describe it. But there are people that really feel it's fundamentally different. Essentially, consent happens when everybody agrees with the proposal, and you actually ask each person, do you consent? And they say, yes, I consent. So it's, whereas I think that's one of the differences with consensus, although it's not that you can't do this with consensus, you can, but I think consensus can allow people to simply be quiet and not really take ownership of the decision, right? Whereas by consenting, by formally saying I consent, they're saying that, and if they are doing things later that undermine that decision, you can say, well, why did you say you consent if it's obvious you don't, right? So you can hold people accountable more than you might be able to in a more sort of a silent equals acceptance sort of situation. Yeah, and then again, right, getting back to the paramount objection, right? It's that's kind of the big deal, right? It's is what would stop it. So any one person can block a decision, but usually by the time you're getting to the consent round, any objections have probably been already explored and done. So the consent is more of a formal way of saying it's just a formal way of saying a decision that's kind of already come to pass. I think the election process itself is actually one of the more elegant things about sociocracy. So similar to the policy decision and discussion, roles are set for a time. Before the election process, you review the current role holders usually, or how if the changes need to be made in the position, including the length of the term, etc. Then everyone in the circle submits a ballot nominating anyone. They can nominate themselves, they can nominate whoever they want. And then one by one, the facilitator asks each person why they nominated the person they nominated. After that round is done, the facilitator asks people if they want to change, they can. And so they, again, write down on a sheet of paper that they nominate so-and-so. And they go around again. And people either say, I kept the person I nominated, or I decided to change the person. And then they say why they changed. And it might be because they heard new information from somebody else. What I think is really neat about this is that when I've seen it in practice, people sometimes are nominated who never saw themselves as leaders, right? And so it's, even if they end up not being in the role, that it's kind of a nice way to honor and recognize people and help them see themselves as potential folks who can step into this role where maybe they couldn't before. So it's very affirming. And, it's happening all transparently. There's no negative sort of back channel sniping, right? So you're not competing with somebody else to get the most votes to become president or whatever. It's pretty much all positive conversation. So like you wouldn't say, I invite so-and-so because, member X is someone I don't trust. You would say, I invite so-and-so because they have these qualities that will fit the job. Finally, the facilitator gets a sense of the room and can actually decide who put forward who should have the role, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the person with the most nominations. It could be by listening to the process. The facilitator would say, I think this person, I want to put forward this person for the role, and this is why. And then if everyone consents, the person's elected. If people object, then you would continue working on it and trying to find what comes next. So I think some of the pros and cons, it includes all voices. I mean, it doesn't mean that people won't, that people will use their voice, but everyone has the opportunity to use their voice. It ensures buy-in right from the beginning and all the way through the process. And if, you're sometimes worker co-ops don't have everyone in membership, either because they're on probation or maybe they have a long pathway before they become owners, but it also allows non-member staff to participate as well, which I think can be really vital, because it helps prepare them to become members if that's the pathway. It can seem slower or more alien to like Robert's rules, but I was just talking about this the other day with someone, and the process of decision making fits on 2 pages, 2 standard sheets of paper, right, front and back, or 1 page, right, on double-sided. Robert's Rules, to get the official book, that runs 800 pages. So I don't know that Robert's Rules is actually faster or easier. I think it's, in fact, I think in some ways Robert Rules really provides a lot of authority to people who bother to read Robert Rules and know how to use them. It does require, Sociocracy does require a strong facilitator though, and learning how to do that and really helping to make sure that the conversation is going and listening to kind of create that synthesis. So, I think if you're going to use Sociocracy, then I think it's really important that that's part of the member onboarding and that there's ongoing training. And fortunately, there are groups like Sociocracy for Now that has a lot of free resources. They have 2 books, which are both excellent, and I've definitely worked with people that have mainly used the book many voices, one song, or who decides as their primary way of figuring out how to do sociocracy, and it's worked fine for them. So, but it does mean getting everybody trained in how to do it. So that has to be part of it. So, just again, some key aspects, right? All decisions have a lifespan, right? There's a sunset clause, maybe a sunrise clause, after which consent needs to be reaffirmed. And this is, I think, especially important for co-ops where you might have a churn of people coming and leaving the organization. So you shouldn't assume that policies that were okay a year ago are still going to be good. The methods of measurement need to be consented on, and then you need to assess how the decision worked before renewing the consent. Again, paramount reason and paramount objection. People who object need to convey the cause, condition, or argument so that there's a chance to mitigate it or eliminate the concern. And then, really sometimes when we talk about that objection, it's also about it being outside of the range of tolerance. But for individuals, and that's kind of the way people need to think about explaining it. And it's out of the range of tolerance, it doesn't fit the aim, etc. That it's not good enough for now, or it's not safe enough to try to kind of put that back. This is Blue Scorcher Bakery Cooperative, which is in Astoria, Oregon. This is an older map. They've changed their structure a little bit, but this is what the organizational chart looks like. So they have they have some workers that are not members and probably won't be members. So they have the worker owners circle, and the worker owners and elect the board. As you see here, the general manager is on the board of directors. So that's something that I know co-ops, people tend to think the general manager shouldn't be, but they are. And then the general manager's job is to be the leader of the general circle. And then the general circle elects somebody up to the board of directors. In their case, they also have some outside directors. Oregon law allows that. And these are folks that are, professionals that support the organization. I think the rule is that they, by themselves, the outside directors cannot actually block, but they can join with other people and they can raise concerns. Then each part of the bakery has its own circle with a lead and rep that makes up the general circle. So barista, dish, bread, cafe prep, chocolate maintenance, pastry, right? And so, like the budget decision would probably be made by the general circle, but sourcing flour for bread is going to only be the bread circle, right? Issues that are about the ingredients for chocolate are only going to be the chocolate circles. Some maintenance issues might rise to the general circle, but other parts of maintenance are going to be just that. So the bread bakers can't really tell the barista and dish folks what to do. Even if they want to, they can't. So unless it somehow affects their ability to make bread, and then it would go to the general circle. So how does sociocracy compare? So that's, I think, the thing is, and this is what my dissertation was about. I looked at how the type of management helps co-ops align with the cooperative identity. So does using a traditional hierarchy or collectivist management or sociocracy do better? And to model this, I kind of worked off this theory of exit and voice, that members of an organization either will use their voice or use their feet. We're kind of seeing that in real life right now as many people are leaving, Russia because of the war. They're worried about having their voice silenced. We saw that, of course, in the 1990s when people literally walked out of East Germany because they weren't able to use their voice. What we also know is that workers want to participate. So Rogers and Freeman did this longitudinal study, and what they found was more important than compensation is the ability to have their agency as humans, encouraged on the job and to have their ideas matter. And then, of course, the co-op identity, holds all of us to a higher standard than traditional organizations. So to look at it, we used a thing that St. Mary's created called the Co-op Index tool. It's a diagnostic tool that measures the overall adherence of the cooperative identity of an organization. It was designed for worker co-ops. It's both a set of questions, a survey, but also then you compare the policies, and it gives both a 1,000-foot to street level view, starting with what are called these indexes, with trust index, principles index, values index, and then an organizational maturity index. And without getting too into that, the big part of this is to explain how we were measuring them. And what we found is that, in generally speaking, the Co-op Index tool measures is really a measure of human dignity, and that's what the co-op values and principles are, right? It measures the ability of a co-op to create a humane workplace. So, by that introduction, cutting to the chase here, I looked at 3 co-ops. One was a traditional hierarchy, which they called coffee co-op. One was a collective with 80 members in the collective staff. And then the other was a bakery co-op, which you can probably guess is Blue Scorcher. So these are the scores. This percentage is the percent of responses that were in agreement with the stated questions, right? So the higher the percentage number, the more in line the workers of the co-op felt their co-op was essentially within the various index. So organizational maturity is OMI, cooperative values, CVI, cooperative principles, and then the last one is organizational trust. As you see, trust is all pretty high, but overall, the Sociocratic co-op, the bakery co-op, scored substantially higher than either the traditional hierarchy or the collective. In fact, the collective scored pretty low, and I think part of that has to do with collectives. With 80 people is just really too big for a collective, but they work best in smaller groups. If you're trying to operate 7 days a week with 2 or even 3 shifts, you really can't have a true consensus, right? Because not everybody can be at the same meeting, and if you have 2 or 3 different meetings to try to get consensus, people are missing parts of the discussion and conversation. So again, we were measuring which parts of the overall principles or overall score really aligned with that exit voice and loyalty number, and overall, right, the Sociocratic co-op really did well, and so I think obviously it was only 3 co-ops we were looking at. There needs to be more work, but on the whole, I think many of us in the co-op world are seeing that Sociocracy is kind of an operating system, a native operating system for co-ops. If any co-op should probably be using Sociocracy, in my mind, as opposed to following their competitors and then ending up feeling and looking like their competitors. So I'll send the slides along, I guess, because there are some resources here. So Many Voices, One Song is the book that I mentioned. Also, Who Decides, Who Decides. And if any of you are feeling wanting to deal with insomnia, you have my dissertation as well, which is available from the St. Mary's University library. And again, Sociocracy for All does an annual academy. I think the next academy starts in February. It runs for a year. It's a great way to learn. They also have a shorter course called the Sociocratic Leadership Training. That is also a really good and valuable way. You sort of learn by doing, and I definitely recommend both to go through if you want to do a deeper dive. But if nothing else, definitely reading Many Voices, One Song or Who Decides is a great place to start. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing, I think. Right? Okay. I'll go through any questions. I'm happy to take questions.
Wonderful. Thank you again. We were all clapping over here. I don't know if you can hear us, but I've been chatting with some people. They've been private messaging me, and they've been letting me know that they think it's brilliant. I'll read some things here. I don't know if that's going out. I don't know if anybody on the stream can let me know if I am still being heard. That'd be great. But we got, I sure wish our government would work like this, was one of the quotes.
Right.
And I can't hear him now.
Oh,
So, John, I can't hear you. Just give me a moment. We're just going to have to live with the echo.
okay, so I'm gonna focus on it.
Okay. So we do have some questions. I'm going to need to hear his response.
Yeah, so what's the look for feedback, right?
Okay.
Okay, there. The view on focus.
So one of the questions we had to do with what do you do when there is unresolved, like you have a split in the group, 50-50. 50 people want to do, or half the people want to do one thing, the other people want to do something else. What do we do using sociocracy?
Well, I mean, I think ultimately you need to work through what's preventing people from, choosing one of the decisions and kind of talk it out. It might be that you end up not doing anything. That's really one of the more likely outcomes, that maybe it's not ready. The group isn't ready to do that, and I think that's kind of what people have to live with. It can be if it's really one or two people that are roadblocking and the group doesn't. We used Robert's rules, and when you have a 5-4 decision on a board, that's probably not a good decision. Even if you're using Robert's rules, you really still want to get as close as you can to unanimous decisions. So,
kind of along similar lines, what do you do if you have, say, we used an example before where we had 10 people in a cooperative. Let's say in an example like that, we have 9 people who want to go in a direction consistently, but you have the 10th person is like objects, and nothing that the other 9 can convince them of can ever help them to move from their position. Is there a way of resolving that over the long run, or what do you do in a situation like that?
yeah, I mean, it might be that, again, it has to be, really a paramount objection. It can't just be that they're being contrary, right? They have to be able to explain how it's not a safe decision, and if they can't, they need to, and they refuse to change their mind. That's where I think it would make most sense for then the group to say, well, you can't be part of this decision making or for this, and then they can come back when they're, into that fold, when they're able to agree. But and because it might be a case where it's not safe to do nothing, right? And so then you have to work that out. So, but again, I think by working through the conversation, and if people are in good faith, part of it's setting up your culture as an organization of transparency, and I think usually it's pretty rare that gets to happen. But it might also be where it's not a good fit for the organization. So in the co-op circle, we wanted to come out with a statement around George Floyd's murder and Black Lives Matter, and there was one person on the circle that absolutely refused to participate and to support that, and was very critical of critical race theory and a lot of other things. They have ended up leaving the organization because it was really clear that
It's funny you mentioned the George Floyd thing. One of the things I had thought of that we might do as we grow our cooperative network is we do something like make it so that in order to be a member of VAWMA, you also have to sign on to something like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or something. Just as a way of weeding out all the Nazis. But
right. And actually, is what ended up happening. Sociocracy for All ended up building a statement that's on their website, and went to the membership. The whole membership ended up consenting to it. It's I think it's a very elegant statement.
We'll have to check that out. Kat, do you have any questions?
Yeah, actually, hi John, how are you?
Wonderful. Yourself?
Thank you again for showing up and giving us some of your time today. I greatly appreciate it. A couple of the questions I had in your presentation, you mentioned the sunset sunrise clause. Can you explain that concept just a little bit more? I come from a retail background, and so for me, it might mean something 100% different. So I'm just wondering if you can
Okay.
just give some context to that.
Sure. So I guess the sunset clause would mean that if nothing else happens, by a certain date, that the policy may no longer be enforced, right? That it sunsets automatically. Sunrise is one that actually happened with in cab, and that was there was this effort to force all the cab companies to have wheelchair accessible vehicles, and we were okay with it, but the other companies weren't, and so the compromise that ended up was what's called a sunrise. Said as long as one company provided wheelchair accessible service, none of no one would be required to do it. But if no companies provided it, then all companies would have to provide it. And so we agreed to that because we were going to do it anyways, and that meant we were going to be the only players in that market. So it's we were happy with it, and but that's kind of what I mean by sunrise. That
That's perfect. Awesome. And the other co-op question I guess I had is there I don't want to call it a proof positive, but is there like that you want to start a co-op, you want to open this business? I hazard to say a bakery because I know when I've been working with James over the last couple of months, every time we go to use examples and constructive conversations are like, okay, so we got flagons and dragons and we got the driftwood scorpion. Turns out that we're just hungry all the time. But I'm wondering, is there like a full, I don't want to call it foolproof, but is there like you want to start a co-op, open this kind of business, and it's a good stepping stone for first-time entrepreneurs or someone who really wants to get their foot in the door?
Well, I guess I would say it probably depends a little bit on what's on the situation on the ground. So I would look at things that aren't very capital intensive. So like we do a lot of home care co-ops in Washington. Home care co-ops really have they're the only capital needs they have are really operating cash to be operating long enough to get a positive cash flow, which takes about 6 months. But they don't really have, it's not like they're buying cars or, have to buy other expensive capital things. They can run it off of a laptop or even really off of phone if they need to. So I would say that would probably be the biggest thing. Is it's just going to be something that's not very capital intensive, but otherwise, it should be something people know. It should be something people know and maybe have passion about. If you're not really into baking, I probably wouldn't start a bakery.
That's amazing. And my last question is, I always like to ask this question of all of our guest speakers. What got you involved in co-op? Why did you join the co-op movement, and why are you passionate about this project?
Well, so when I finished my at University of Wisconsin, I was graduating, and I was actually going to my plan was to become an English professor, but I decided to take a year off or so before I went to grad school, and I was at the time I was in the only student labor union in the country, the Memorial Union Labor Organization, which is since defunct. But and so my politics were definitely about worker rights, and I decided I was going to drive cab for a year or so, and there were the cab companies. One was worker owned, and I thought, well, worker owned, that's as close as you get to, that's even better than a union, right? And when I was in my interview, they asked me how long I plan to stay. I said probably a year until I go to grad school, and it ended up being 26 years. It turned out I didn't really want to be an English professor by the time I created the graduate program I wanted until 2004. So, it's kind of been a lifelong thing about labor power and worker rights, and I think that's, and then seeing how it actually worked and watching how as a cab company, there are problems at union. It wasn't a perfect organization by any means, but you know, I saw people that were literally houseless when they started working with us, and they were buying houses after a couple of years. They were able to buy a house or buy, things like that. And so, really watching how people were able to get out of poverty and really have agency. And I knew how the other cab drivers in the city lived, and we just were much better. We had healthcare. No one else had health. No cab drivers didn't have healthcare until 2009. Well, we had healthcare all the way going back into the 80s, and it was a great plan, and the company. So it's things like that I just saw straight up what a difference co-op can make to workers.
Right. Well, I just want to say thank you again, John, for giving us your time and expertise. We've learned a lot, definitely. That was Gavin. He's been doing putting out all the technical fires for us there. So I don't think we have any more. I've been looking at the chat. I don't think we have any more questions. And it's almost 9. So I just want to say thank you again for your time. And thank you again for everybody who's taken the time to watch this. We appreciate you. We're looking forward to developing more ideas as we go along. So we're going to be meeting again next week and the week after, where we're going to be going into a little bit more details about what it is we propose to do. And so with that, I think we're going to bring tonight to a close and say thank you, everybody.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
So yeah. Thank you. We still got OBS running?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if anybody's out there still listening, just a quick reminder that you are awesome, and watch us online, like and subscribe. I believe that's what everybody says.
Yes, that's the thing.
That's the sound. And yes, once again, yours in cooperation, VAWMA, where people are our bottom line.